By the way, there's always been controversy about this fire. And I'm just going to add, as me being a great military strategist, that's supposed to get a laugh, that some people say, well, the fire started because of, the shooting and made cannons and people firing and setting off fires, and so naturally, the city's going to burn. Some people said, oh, well, maybe the Armenians and Greeks set the fire to keep the Turkish army away. Kemal Ataturk, the Turkish general, he was a guy that defeated the British when they landed at Gallipoli in 1915. And he was the man watching the Ottoman Empire collapse, going back into the hinterland, unfortunately, where the historical Armenia is, putting a Turkish army together, and determining that he was going to build a lot. The Ottoman Empire was gone. He was going to build a modern Turkey, and he could only see that Turkey was going to be for the Turks. The Greek army went in. They were defeated by Ataturk. The next thing, the people in Smyrna saw this Greek army hightailing it, getting on boats and going back to Greece, and thinking they were going to be part of Greece. There goes the army, and now they're wondering, what's going to happen to us? Well, they found out soon enough when the Turkish army started to approach. Now, here's Ataturk coming to this city with hundreds of thousands of people, and he's decided it's ethnic cleansing all the way. And this is what was happening in the hinterland that we didn't know much about because there were no news sources there. Smyrna is a totally different issue. It's the richest country in the Ottoman Empire, the richest. It's a cosmopolitan city. Well, you can see by the map. But he's not giving this city up to become part of the new Greece or anything like that. So what does he do? Well, he can go in and start shooting everybody, but that gets, number one, kind of messy. You have to expend a lot of bullets to totally massacre a city of several 100,000 people, and then how does he explain all the bodies? That's not going to work too well. Well, what about another strategy? Just burn them out. Gee, this fire started. You see this fire, this ring around the Greek? Gee, tough luck, this fire started, and there was no place for the people to go except the docks, and with the fire at their backs. Gee, some people were lucky enough to be taken off. Gee, other people threw themselves in the bay and drowned. It was a pretty brilliant strategy on his part. You talk about ethnic cleansing, burn them out, burn them out. And then they can argue until doomsday about how it all happened and what a great tragedy it was. Anyway, I found this book to be of interest, and I hope you found I went on about the story, but I hope you found that to be of interest. So let me see if I can catch up with my notes. Now, we've talked about Smyrna, and I previously talked about Hajin, and of course we know what came to pass there about Pop's previous family and the thousands of deaths that occurred in these places. I did find out. Let's see, where's our next thing here? Yeah, there's the next thing that I'm going to just discuss in it. I did find out, we knew that before the deportations out of Hajin in 1915, that there were about 25, 26, 28,000 Armenians living in Hajin. They were literally all driven out of Hajin in 1915, driven out into the deserts of Syria, some as far as Iraq, thousands and thousands of them. This is one deportation. They were all over this part of Turkey. There were no deportations in Smyrna, but they were in the interior. And so when I first was reading about the massacre that happened in 1920, I assumed that the 25,000 or so were back, and in fact, only about 6,000 to 8,000 people were there, including Pop and his family. So he had gone to Adna, and not too long ago, reading about the Armenian history in Syracuse, New York, where they had their first church, I read something in there about him, and that he had left Khachadourian to get help from the French, and he had only been there a week, and we didn't know how long he'd been there. We just finally realized he'd never was able to get back there. Well, he'd only been there a few days, a week, when word came down from Adana. This would have been in October of 1920. Why did he go to Adana? Well, again, I thought he went to Adana, if you recall, that he tried to get, everything was still chaotic in what we know of modern Turkey. In the southern part around Adana, the European powers, the victors, had taken areas of influence, and this was a French area of influence around Adana. If you look at your map, if you look at that first map there, the map of Syria, and you see I have an arrow down at Adana there, right down here. I know the Prince Poor, but that's where he had gone. Khachadourian is not named Khachadourian on this map because the Turks changed the name, but it was just north about 100, 125 miles. So here is where he was, and the French fleet with French commandos, Marines, is in this area. They actually controlled this area militarily and politically temporarily, and that's why he had gone down there to get the help. Well, he was still in Adana when word came down of the massacre, and that no one had survived. How he found specifically what happened, Pop's, I'm going to make a reference to that in a minute, but Pop's sister-in-law, his wife's sister, had written in My Beloved Armenia that that a huge number of the people, including her sister and the three boys, with other Christians, were all inside this church, and when the Turks broke through, they burned the church and burned them alive. And so this is how he got word in Adana about what had happened. And this is just a week after he left. So when Pop found out what happened, he was absolutely, as you can imagine, overwhelmed with anguish, with grief. And I remember our mom once saying that after this time, she said, you know, frankly, he just didn't see any reason that he should live any longer. And then I think what happened to Pop, and he never explained to us, but I think that God's hand touched Pop at this time, at probably the worst time of his life. And I think God's hand touched him. I think he heard the words, "O good and faithful servant." And I think he said to our Father, I wrote these words, "While you suffer the loss of your own children, there are many other children lost wandering the streets around you." And all these arrows that I have on this map, including on these are just a few of the towns, and much of this is the old historic Armenia, where literally thousands and thousands and thousands of Armenians were massacred. Thousands. And the result was that, yes, many of the children were statistics also, but you killed the adults, and sometimes you didn't. The little children, they'll probably just starve to death. You had these orphans that were scattered all over this area. Orphan children, boys, girls. And I think what happened, and I think the message that our Father got was this. While you suffer the loss of your own children, there are many other children lost wandering the streets around you. Lift up your heart, go out and gather them around you, give them peace and hope. And that's exactly what he did. It was rather amazing. And that picture of those boys, I included it just to give you an idea. There's something like, and these are the boys. You can see Pop in the middle there, on the third row with some of the adult staff there. And there's about 250 people in this picture. And this is just simply, this is not all the orphan boys in Adna. This is just a drop in the bucket. And if you can just multiply this times probably thousands and thousands of times and see all these young children and all these young orphans that were rendered into the state because of these great tragedies that were taking place. So that's the picture. That's the picture I have to wanted you to see, just for you to get a sense of what he did, how he gathered these boys, and gave them hope. Marie Banker, who wrote "My Beloved Armenia," that was Pop's wife's sister, his sister-in-law. She talked about Hadjin, and she did say about Pop having survived because he was trying to get relief for the town. And she said about our father, she said, she talks about the death of her sister and her 3 nephews. And then she said this of Pop and his survival: he is preaching the gospel in a better way than he ever did. His soul has been refined and purged through many afflictions. And on the chapter in Hadjin, she closed with these words, and I think this is an appropriate close. She said, thinking about their future, she said, "There will be no toil or care. Sorrow shall not enter there, but a peaceful rest unbroken in glory land so fair." Talking about heaven. What a meeting that will be when we greet our blessed Savior far beyond life's stormy sea. What a meeting that will be. With our loved ones in the glory, what a meeting that will be. I thought that was just a beautiful expression to close that chapter on the death of her sister and her nephews. And obviously it meant a lot to Pop and Mom too. So with that, I'm going to close my remarks.